All right. You guys good to go? All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Thanks everyone for coming out. First item on the agenda is our reorganization, election of officers. Currently, I am the chairman, Alex Ulmer is the vice chair, and Tim Ruth is the secretary. What are your thoughts? Anybody want to jump up a seat? Want to keep the same configuration?
I'm okay with
I'm okay with that.
Fine with that.
All right, somebody make a motion.
The motion would maintain the same status quo.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Meeting minutes from our last meeting in November. Everybody get a chance to look at them. Any corrections?
Look good to me.
Yep, good. Agreed.
Motion to approve.
Make a motion. Make a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Do we have anything on plans? Select properties? We need to get an extension?
Yeah. Yeah, because the board would have to act on it by this month, so you want to make a recommendation, a conditional denial, and I'll seek the extension letter before the board meeting.
Anybody want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion, conditional denial.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there anything else we need from you, Steve, here?
I don't think so.
All right. So we're going to get into this data center zoning amendment. Before we get going on this, I'm just going to ask people, we're going to have discussion up here. Once we're done, I'll open the floor to public discussion. I'll ask that you raise your hand if you want to be recognized, come up to the podium and say what you want to say. I'll give you 2.5 minutes.
Name and address.
Oh, yeah, you need your name and address when you get up there. So if you can sit tight until we're done, appreciate it. All right. So how do we want to start this? Everybody got a chance to review this, I'm sure.
Yep. Yes.
So I'm sure everyone has input. So John, I was going to start with you.
Before that, I'll answer a question with a question. What's the outcome of tonight? Are we voting?
I think my understanding is this is discussion to make suggestions, either accept it or make suggestions to improve it or disprove some of the things that are in it. Take public comment and see what we agree with on public comment and possibly put together some type of a recommendation. I think there's going to be details that are going to need further investigation by whatever professional does that investigation, depending on what area the investigation needs to be in.
Yeah, if I may, Chris,
Please.
unless you recommend to approve this as written, you will see it again.
Right.
If there's any revisions to it, it's going to have to be resubmitted to the Township and Bucks County Planning Commission for comment in its final form.
Right.
So,
I'm sorry, did we receive anything from Bucks County yet?
no, I have not seen anything.
Yeah.
So not surprising that I didn't see it yet because it was
Right.
just talked about at last month's Board of Supervisors meeting. Would have been sent to the county. It usually takes them about 45 days until you get on their meeting cycle to release their comments. So they'll probably release them at the end of this month. You'll see them next month.
Right. Well, I would assume, I mean, I have some things that I would like to see worded differently or whatever. So I would assume we're not going to approve it in its current form this evening.
And I guess we spoke on the phone a little bit. I can just give you the little bit of background that I know,
Yeah, please do.
at least where this came from. So it was, Dave Keeley, the solicitor, who put this together in conjunction with some other townships that are also working on similar ordinance. I believe a lot of it was derived from the Penn Future and the work that they've done in the sample ordinances that they've developed in other communities. In reading some of the other emails, the point of this is to get something on the record now in the township because we don't have a specific use for data centers. It would, I don't know what it would, you have to allow different uses. It would probably get funneled into warehouse or something now, and we wouldn't have specific standards for it. Just like every other new ordinance or new kind of use that comes around, I would view this as, an initial ordinance for data centers. And as more information comes online, as the state may or may not, adopt regulations, you could also always revisit it and update or modify your regulations as more information is done in the future. But the idea now is to get something on the books should somebody come in, since it's a pretty hot item. And we had that interested party. That wasn't an official application to the township. That was just an informational presentation, but they viewed that as a viable property for it. So it'd be better than not to have something on the books in West Rock Hill. Doesn't mean that you have to adopt it tonight to get it on tomorrow, but look at it that this won't be a perfect document, even once we do make some modifications to it. And then it could be revisited when, more information and the state decides how they're going to regulate anything on a statewide level or preempt anything that the township would do.
Right. But at least it gives us a foot in the door on it.
Yeah. And let me just say, we're probably not going to resolve all of the quote unquote legal issues around what we can and can't regulate. Right. We could ask questions and we could get better answers. But all of these ordinances are written with a clause in the back. The severability clause, which is the next to the last section, basically says if anything in this ordinance is determined improper or unenforceable, it only throws out that provision, not the entire ordinance.
Right.
So if you make the provision a little more expansive, then it may not be permitted, but it's your best guess what's permitted now. Because if it gets challenged later, it's only that provision of the ordinance that would get challenged, and all your other dimensional standards or whatever requirements in the ordinance would still stand.
OIE, like 25 acre minimum,
Yeah,
be one that would jump into my head.
right. So if that was, somebody took you to court over that and the township lost on the 25 acres, that doesn't mean all the other standards of what district it's in or any of the other provisions would get thrown out also.
Okay.
Just something to keep in mind.
Thank you. All right. So that being said, John, I'll start with you. I know you had
Thank you.
input.
I guess I'll piggyback on a couple of things that Steve said. One is that there is a parallel effort going on in Harrisburg right now. There's two bills working their way through government related to this specific topic. The state has recognized that townships are kind of going on their own at different speeds, and the state thinks that there's benefit into the state coming up with a template for townships to follow. So that it's working its way through the House of Representatives in Harrisburg right now to come up with a model ordinance that townships can to use if they want to. And additionally, there's a second ordinance that they're looking at that has reporting standards around data centers in terms of, what are they doing to try to manage their electricity use and excess heat and things like that. So while we're moving along, the state's moving along, and I think we're doing the right thing by getting in front of it, but recognizing as we go further along, there may be things that the state comes up with that either match or don't match with what we have, and it'll be important to kind of decipher that to see what applies only specifically to us versus what could be challenged if there's a difference that somebody comes along and says, wait a minute, you said this and the state says this. So it's more to come and a lot more information to follow. So with regard to our specific ones, I do have some comments. I'll start with the one about that Chris mentioned about the 25 acres. So the ordinance specifies that data centers are restricted to the industrial area, which is kind of like the lightish, grayish area of the map. So it's a rather small part of the township. And the ordinance specifies a 25 acre minimum. So I sat there and I looked through the map and I counted like 7 properties that would fill that requirement of being more than 25 acres, and most of those are already built. So if somebody wanted to come in and put a data center in, they'd either have to buy one of the open lots, buy a lot and tear down what's there, or go through some combination slicing and dicing to come up with 25 acres. The bottom line to that is, like, there's not going to be a data center in the park across the street. You know, that's not the right area. There's a limited number of available lots where this would occur. So there's not going to be one on every street corner. You know, there's a lot of energy around data centers, but the scope for us would appear to be fairly limited compared to what some other townships are going through. So I think that's certainly a positive of being where we are today. To go into some of the specifics, under Article 2, Section G18, it's asking for an independent entity to look at water, sewer, and electric usage. So the statement says a well-served letter from each public utility provider of electric, water, and sewer, and a written assessment by a certified professional in the field of engineering, hydrogeology, and or utility design that there is sufficient capacity available to serve the proposed use for electric, water, and sewer consumption, as well as the projected service needs of the future of the town's municipal growth. Any such letter of assessments shall be to the satisfaction of the township engineer. I can't speak to water and sewer, but as far as electric capacity is concerned, that's handled elsewhere. You know, PP&L is our local utility, and they are a member of the PJM Interconnect, who manages all the electric for all of us. And PJM is 13 states and District of Columbia. It's a wide area. For a point of reference, a data center in our area may be 10, 20, 30 megawatts of load. PPL's peak load for 2025 was 7,500 megawatts. So you got 30 into 7,500, not a lot of impact. As I said, PPL is part of the PJM Interconnect. PJM total load for 2025 was 160,000 megawatts. So again, 30 versus 160,000, it's fly spit. I mean, it's not going to make an impact. So in terms of the overall capacity, it's there. In terms of an engineer providing a written letter certifying that, I don't know who would do that outside of the public utilities themselves. So I think we're covered without that clause needing to be there referring to electric utilities, because it's handled elsewhere. Number 2 there says, if the above mentioned assessment identifies a detrimental impact or threshold where utility capacity is not sufficient, the applicant shall provide at its own expense the necessary system improvements necessary to eliminate any limits or system constraints to accommodate the proposed use. So I said PPL load for last year was 7,500 megawatts. You could say, well, how are they going to get that 30 to this customer? What are they going to have to do between there and then? PPL, once they get a request for service, they will perform that analysis. They will determine, not under what we call base case condition, but they will even look at various contingencies that if this piece of equipment's out of service or this piece of equipment's out of service, is the ability to serve this customer unimpeded. They typically don't do that on a customer by customer basis, but they rather do that periodically, summer, fall. And again, because of the size of this customer, they may look at the local substation or the local lines from the substation to the customer and determine whether there's any impact to those pieces of equipment. And if so, they will go ahead and make those modifications to their infrastructure. the clause that says the applicant shall provide at his own expense, what really happens is PPL's tariff, as approved by the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission, specifies what PPL can charge the customer for and what they can't charge the customer. So whatever the customer is responsible for, yes, they'll pay for it. But if there's other pieces of the infrastructure that now become overloaded as a result of this new customer, that's covered by their tariff that's already approved by the state. So again, I think that clause can be taken out as well because it's already covered elsewhere. And
John, before you go any further, can you explain your expertise in this field?
I worked for PICO for 25 years. Many of those years were in the transmission planning department. So I'm familiar with, from a PICO standpoint, the studies that are run to determine on load growth what pieces of equipment may be may be overloaded as a result of new load in the system, as well as working with my colleagues in the neighboring utilities and PJM. PJM is kind of like the overlord of all this, that they manage the capacity for the total interconnect. So they've got their level where they're looking at the total system at the highest voltage levels. The individual distribution company, PPL, PICO, they're looking at their equipment at the lower voltage and distribution levels. And I'm familiar with the tariffs and the rate schedules and what we could bill customers for, because I've worked on many, many projects of not just new load being added to the system, but even new generation being added to the system that could potentially cause overload. So I've spent a bit of time in this area.
Okay. Thank you.
And I just widen out what John was talking about. Subsection F here that we're reviewing requires that the facility be served by all public utilities. So what John described as the procedures and who would be making those determinations for electric would essentially be the same for sewer and water. If it's served by Telford Borough Authority, it's Telford Borough Authority that's going to determine if they have the capacity and will serve the project and what improvements need to be made for it. And same thing with sewer. In that case, it would be the same for sewer. So that may need to be, some language cleaned up about too, to be a little more specific to the serving authorities is where we need the determination on that information from.
I'll jump down to item G. It says utility lines, to the extent practical, utility lines including but not limited to electronic, fiber optic, cable, and telephone lines from substation to data center shall be placed underground. This requirement shall not apply if the utility company provides above ground lines or the placement of underground lines is not feasible in the opinion of the township engineer. Utility lines to the substation from off-site may be placed above ground. I wasn't sure whether the word substation in this case refers to the utility substation or to the customer substation. PPL is going to run their line to the customer's site, from their substation to the customer's site, and they're going to come to a point of interconnection. That could be a utility pole at the property line, or it could go all the way into a substation that's owned by the customer that distributes the power out within his own facility. So if this section is referring to the customer substation, then I agree with it. If it's referring to the utility substation, again, they're going to make that determination whether they're going to be above ground or underground. And it may be multiple lines that feeds this customer. The customer may decide, well, I don't want to be as vulnerable to storms or pole hits or something like that. So they can request multiple services coming from 2 different substations or down 2 different roads or whatever to minimize the impact of external interference. And again, PPL will determine how that configuration, where they tap into existing lines or run new lines or whatever. From that part of it, they'll make that determination. But once it gets to the property line, and it goes in from there until the customer's facilities, then I agree with this clause as it's written.
Yeah, and the only person, the only outfit that we had in here was at that Cat Hill property. And they had the overhead lines that they could drop in and put their own substation.
Right.
John, I think that last sentence kind of indicates that they're talking about the client substation. Because utility lines to the substation from off-site may be placed above ground.
Right, yeah.
Well, again, I wasn't sure whether they meant, because I could read it the other way too and say that could be TPL substation. I just think the wording needs a little bit,
Gotcha.
A little more clarity.
yeah, a little clear. Other than that, I mean, the concept I think is fine.
Yeah.
Next one I would jump down to is under K, where it talks about environmental impacts. In the reading that I've done and the other discussions that I've heard here, there's a large discussion on water usage. And, you know, these facilities can consume a tremendous amount of water for cooling. And an alternative is a closed loop cooling system where they essentially recycling, rather than dumping all the hot water down the toilet, recycling within the facility as much as possible. I read that they could possibly save as much as 70% of water usage by cycling through. May consider adding, because there's nothing in here that mentions that.
No, I agree with you. I'm, you know, from the presentation we got from that last applicant, they were doing a closed loop with fan cooling. So it was like a car radiator.
Right.
I've read about other systems where they have closed loop, but they're cooling it with another water source. And they're losing a lot of the water due to evaporation from that.
Right.
Cooling towers. So to me, the most water efficient system would be closed loop with fan cooling. So I would like to see that in the ordinance for sure.
You know, other than that, I mean, it could geothermal cooling where they run it through the ground. I read another thing which is kind of new to the industry where it's a heat recovery generator where they can actually use the hot water coming out of their system, run it through a machine that generates electricity,
right,
and put the electricity back in the grid. That's still something fairly new, but that's a technology that's emerging
Right. That could be added to the ordinance later.
potentially. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm all on board for putting that in. I'd also like to see something, again, that last applicant said he can take 30 days to fill the system. You know, they can fill the system while they're still putting the place together.
Right.
So that would put that much less strain on the Telford's water system. So if we included something about having closed loop fan cooled system with a minimum amount of time to fill the system. Say, I don't know what, he said he could do it in 30 days and stay under 5,000 a day. 5,000 gallons a day to fill the system. And their other water usage would just be, I mean, I'm sure there's an evaporative content to that. Just, water usage in the bathrooms. So, I mean, if that's something that people want to consider, I'd be on board with that as well. A minimum filling time allowance.
Mhm.
And that's assuming that Telford can provide that much water. Well, in this, if at Cat Hill Road.
Right.
Could be another water service. Or would it be? Would Telford have all the PI?
Yeah, you only serve the PI.
Yeah. Anybody else have comment on that?
Just with regard to the water, I think, it doesn't really talk about on-lot wells being used for anything, whether it's for the utility water or whether it's for cooling water on site. I mean, they mentioned the hydrogeologist, which is the person who reviews something like that, but we're prepared.
Well, it says it has to be provided by
Yeah, will serve letter
Yeah, electric, water and sewer. So they have to have public electric, public water and public sewer. That
Okay,
makes
so
sense.
it's, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just clarifying that
It's-
that's what it actually means is
Right,
they can't use on lot resources
right. Water resource
or sewer.
or sewer. What section was that in? Was that environmental impacts?
F1.
Actually, I was looking at a K.
Yeah, K.
K1. And then K was the other one, yeah.
Yeah, that's where we're,
Yeah, F1 is what references public utilities. K is what
Yeah, K is
John was
environmental.
just talking about with the water.
yeah, so, staying on the environmental impact issues, it talks about air pollution. I know there's a lot of talk about backup generator power, which people have concerns with air pollution.
Right.
I mean, do you think that this section with all the air pollution standards takes care of that issue? I mean, they have to stay under these thresholds.
Right.
No matter what's running. So in my opinion, that covers the issues with generator pollution.
Well, DP is also going to regulate these generators as long as they're not strictly emergency. I think, depending on how much they exercise, there's limitations on it. But that brings up another issue when we get to permitting. Is it's E in section N on site generation. Our township's involved with Salem, our company is involved with Salem Township. And Amazon's putting in a huge number of data centers, I think like 15, being fed off the Salem nuclear plant. And we got a call from DEP freaking out because they had 150 or 250 emergency generators. They hadn't needed any of them before. And they're asking why the township didn't do anything about it. It's like, it's not our job to permit them. That's on
Right.
you guys. But I thought maybe we want to talk, at least mention something in there about permitting for on-site generation for fuel supplies.
This is under P, you said?
Yeah, at the very end, they talk about highway occupancy permits, NPDES, ENS plans. I'm thinking we probably want to put something in there about storage tank permits as well.
So fuel storage for generation. Gotcha. All right, let's circle back. Okay, does anyone have anything else on environmental?
No. I'm down to M.
You're down to N,
M.
M as in Mary? Oh, solar.
I looked at this one and this is one where we're talking about installing solar generation. I could not find anywhere that it says that the township has the authority to mandate solar power or anything. It does not show, what's interesting, it doesn't show up in the proposed ordinance that the state's working on. But in the complement bill that talks about reporting, one of the clauses in there says that the data center needs to report back on an annual basis steps that they've taken to mitigate energy usage. So it's kind of like carrot and stick, we want to mandate it with the stick approach, and the state's looking at more of the carrot approach where, we're not going to mandate it, but tell us what you're doing about it.
Right.
So I don't know where that one's going to go, but if we still go the route of mandating it, I suggest we look at something more quantitative rather than architectural for solar panels. The ordinance as it's written talks about, putting them on the roof, putting them on the walls on a certain angle, and I mean,
Carports.
right.
Building carports to put them on.
But it doesn't,
Like the link.
there's no tangible result as a result of that. So what I looked at was providing alternate wording that would say that we would require that the data center would have to offset 20% of their peak load with solar panels. We would look at the what, not the how. The how is, put them on the roof and on the carport and everything else. The what is, we would like you to meet this specific requirement for output of your solar panel system. You go figure out how you're going to do it.
Right.
But this is like the number that we want you to shoot for. Something like that, I think is a little bit more tangible and measurable rather than the other approach as an alternative.
I like that also because the next section 1 says it needs to be approved by the fire chief. So if we put all this in place and the fire chief came back and said, no, for whatever reason,
Right. I can't get my trucks on the carports.
But at least if we give the
14-foot high carport.
the provision for, X percentage, that leaves that up to the tenant, to the customer to figure out how to get there.
Right.
As opposed to us telling them, put it on the carport.
I mean, you can make suggestions and say, hey, utilize roof, open spaces.
Well, would you rather see it on the roof and in these areas rather than in an open field?
I would let them make that determination. I don't know what they would have to do in terms of their roof in order to support solar panels versus putting on the roof. Don't have an expert.
I don't think anybody's gonna have an argument with making anything more difficult for an applicant.
Again, in terms of orders of magnitude, these facilities use a lot of electricity, and solar panels are not very efficient. So based on numbers I saw, it takes approximately 2 acres of ground, 2 acres of solar panels to come up with a megawatt of power. And if we're talking about a facility that's going to consume 20 or 30 megawatts of power, unfortunately, we're not going to make a dent in it based on today's technology. Maybe somebody will invent more efficient solar panels down the road that could be used or whatever. But just in terms of what to expect, we're not going to get a lot from it. And that kind of goes into my next comment on section N, where it talks about selling the excess power back into the power system. It's not like you're going to have much excess. Even on a hot summer day, you're probably not going to offset what you're using. So,
No.
and
It
if
doesn't hurt to have that in there.
well, but again, there's rules in place. I mean, the Public Utility Commission already has the rules set out for utilities must buy back excess power if there's excess power to be had.
Right.
So it's redundant.
Okay, all right, I'm fine. So to reach 20% of
It'd be like 4 acres of ground.
how many?
4 acres of, I'm sorry, 8 acres of solar panels to come up with
20% of what
20% of,
an average use of a data center would use. Huh. Yeah, so
But the technology is continually evolving.
yes, right.
By the time this
By the time this
passes,
Well, and even these data centers, I mean, if you look back 20, 30 years, it would take 7 acres of warehouses for computer technology for what we carry around on a phone today. So, what's going to happen down the road? I think eventually these will go the way of the Blockbuster video stores that are going out of business because the technology will just keep going. But we'll probably not happen while I'm still around, but,
It's the other thing I was wondering about was why is it only solar? Would they consider wind or other clean energy?
well, the other thing that I snuck in here was if they go the route of going through some sort of heat recovery regeneration, that they could use that as part of the calculation for their 20%. I don't know what those systems generate, but at least that would be something that would add back into what they were able to recover. And the last comment I have is section Q, where it talks about decommissioning. I would think that unless some future billionaire was going to buy the facility and tear everything down and turn it back into a cornfield, that leaving the solar system in place for the next tenant would make more sense.
Yeah, I agree with that, for sure.
Those are my comments.
That it?
If I had more time, I could come up with more, but sucks for being retired.
I guess my one question on the decommissioning, Steve, do you know, is there any hazardous material in the solar panels?
Probably.
That might be the one reason for leaving the decommissioning piece in there. So it doesn't become blighted because no one wants to cover the cost of extracting the iridium or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, it's written that it's in the event the data center is discontinued, so it's not only a requirement if somebody's going to, I mean, maybe you could clear it out to, instead of discontinued is, demolished or reconstructed or something.
Yeah, you could say
Just
more towards if the intent is to decommission the solar panels, that they're decommissioned in a proper way. Not that they have to decommission the solar panels.
Right. The solar panels are being
Yeah, the
decommissioned, not the whole facility.
Solar panels are decommissioned.
Yes. That makes sense.
If the system is decommissioned, make sure that it's proper.
That makes sense.
So when fusion comes along.
Get your Mr. Fusion.
Anybody else have anything? I would note that, this is going to be a special exception. So any projects would have to go through the zoning hearing or any permitting would be. Yeah. So it's not something that goes through the supervisors, it goes to the zoning hearing board.
I didn't see AI mentioned anywhere in here. Not that it's a big deal, but we, called out cryptocurrency and blockchain and some other stuff, maybe AI processing in the description of a data center on page 1. I don't know if that makes much of a difference, but I think that's what's
Yeah, I think it's probably
Driving
worth
much of it.
mentioning.
the last paragraph, maybe under data center at the bottom of second to last on page 1, to include a line in there calling out artificial intelligence processing.
Yes.
Yeah, processing and training.
All right. Anyone else?
The equipment in these facilities needs to be, replaced every 3 to 5 years with current technology. I don't know how much is in them if we talk about decommissioning. I don't know how granular we want to get at this level, about how that equipment is recycled or reclaimed.
Question. Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
Off the point, I kind of know how it does work because that's my son's the business that he's in.
Okay.
And most of these companies lease their equipment, they don't buy them, it goes back to the leasing company who recycles it properly and resells it. That's sort of the legitimate industry standard.
Right.
Whether there's bad players out there, you know, I don't know, but there is an industry set up around recycling this equipment, reselling it when you can. But actually said the data center stuff it's outdated so fast you can't resell it.
Unless they're doing crypto, in which case it's burned out.
Okay, I'll leave that alone.
Yeah, all right. All right.
One
Yes.
other thing that I noticed in here, and it's been an issue in our ordinance, I think, for a long time, but it might be a good time to address it. Unrelated but related is our definition of height of building. Because for a warehouse type building, a flat roof building, our definition is based on the average height of the building along the frontage, not the average height of the whole building, which hasn't bid us anywhere necessarily, but you know, somebody could be creative.
Lot, you could have a 50.
Somebody could be creative with their building. And we have that situation at Fresco, but that building was long before a lot of our new ordinances, and it's also backs up to the railroad tracks and everything else. And, you know, it's not an issue there, but it could be an issue somewhere. And it's a little bit unclear about how you address the equipment on the roof too.
Solar panel.
Like solar and air conditioning and chillers and coolers and things. So I don't have an answer for that today, but I think it's something you might want to, you know, if you agree, recommend to add into this is a cleanup of the building height definition.
Yeah, I know we've had issues with equipment on the roof, whether that was included.
Right.
I saw something in here that said like elevator towers, chillers, anything like that was part of the 35.
Was included, yes.
Yeah, but that,
I think it's I.
For I.
right, that just means somebody's going to the zoning hearing board because they're already going to want a building higher than 35 feet
Mhm.
and then have the equipment on top of that. Because they're going to look for a 50-foot building, probably minimum 50-foot, you know, clearance for them inside usable. Doesn't mean you can't go with 35, you know, with equipment on top, but your definition should be clear how that's measured.
Yeah, it says anything on the roof is going to be included in the height calculation.
Yeah, so once you have 10 foot of equipment up there, you'd have a 25-foot high
Right.
building with
Mhm.
equipment. And
I
it's
don't
not
know.
practical. And I'm not sure, does it say that it has to be screened on the roof?
I thought I saw some.
Looked at different ones so many times, I can't remember all.
Urban walls and screen without equipment protrusion.
Okay. Good.
So what kind of verbiage would you suggest we insert here?
Well, I'd like to look at some of our other ordinances because I don't remember them off the top of my head what some of the other townships have, but I'm thinking you probably want like an average height of all the facades of the building, not an average height of just the front facade.
Right.
As a starting point, which would keep it from an unusual lot where you could build, you know, 50 or 70 feet in the back. And
Right.
35 feet in the front and circumvent the intent of the height requirement.
So,
And then a clarification about whether or not the equipment is included or not included. And if it's not included, you have an additional, you know, 10 feet for equipment or some guidance as to how much equipment you could put on the roof.
So maybe average height over the entire perimeter of the building.
That's an easy, you know, I think reasonable way to look at the building. Most of these shouldn't be a problem because they're going to be built on a pad. You know, take the one on Quarry Road that just got built. You know, they're going to level the site first.
Right.
And then so we'll be measured off of that. But Yeah, on a creative site that you could cut in the front of the building and
Anything else?
I didn't.
All right, so if we're good up here, I'm going to open the floor to public comment. So please raise your hand and come on up to the podium. Yes, come on up.
Jean Yandrick, 1322 Lawn Avenue. So in the Lehigh Valley, Montgomery County and Berks County alone has 4 data centers, DCs, one of being 110,000 square feet. As of 2026, over 50 DCs projects are planned or proposed in Pennsylvania. Josh Shapiro is on board with Amazon investing $20 billion in Pennsylvania. Currently, Amazon is attempting to get permits to discharge water into the Susquehanna, which is now causing debates over noise, pollution, and energy demand. That's in Luzerne County and Lower Bucks. In the Lehigh Valley, the Atlas Industrial Project has a 5.1 million square foot DC plan, which encompasses 410 acres. Bethlehem has 27,000, Upper Macungie has 2.6, and there's one in Allentown. According to the Penn State Extension, no public agency tracks the number of DCs in Pennsylvania. Several private firms do. Pennsylvania had between 57 and 97 as of October 2025 and does not include enterprise data centers, which are privately owned or leased. According to the website Pennsylvania Data Center Proposal Map and Data, there are 21 hyperscale data centers in the planning stages as of October of 25. Water usage, it's hard to calculate. The reason being they are not required to report. Energy providers do not share the data on electricity usage, which can help to calculate water usage. And different DCs can differ in water usage. DCs put a strain on local water supplies, especially in dry areas. According to a recent article on Channel 69 News, our region, in light of the snow and the water that we've had, is still in a major drought. Barclays research report of 2024 said an annual demand of power data centers could grow 14 to 21% every year. And we're all aware of what our electricity cost. And PPNL just stated that they're doing another increase. Noise pollution comes from the cooling systems and backup generators. A low hum can be heard 1 to 3 miles away, and there is also the lighting issue. I also have an audio of what it sounds like a data center from a half a mile away, and I would not want to be near it. There are health impacts from emissions due to the fine particles that are released into the air and a host of other pollutants, which I have here. You're all welcome to take a look. That also goes into your wastewater. So if you're doing Telford Borough, all these chemicals are going to go into their water system. One of the biggest ones, it's called an F gas. I can't pronounce it because but it is a potent greenhouse gas, and it's 1,000 times more potent than your carbon dioxide. Wastewater additives are added to the water to prevent corrosion and scaling, which contains your salt and chemicals, there's a host of what keeps the cooling system, and it has to do with corrosion, which goes through it. DCs have the potential to negatively impact property values, and it is the companies that receive the tax benefits. It's massive energy, water consumption, utility bills, noise and light pollution. Right now, there's a moratorium that is being proposed on the hyperscale DCs as of this month to study the impacts, because no one knows the extent of what it's going to cause. Any decisions made now will affect years from now. I'm sorry, I'm really nervous.
All right, doing fine.
With the massive amount of DCs being proposed or built in our surrounding area and the size of them, why does West Rock Hill Township need one? And if I remember correctly, a couple months ago, the guy that was here giving the presentation said, oh, we could reach the corner of Connecticut. But if you have a 5.1 million square foot one being built in the Lehigh Valley, they're going to reach more than Connecticut. Here's the list of chemicals. So I'm asking the board, what's your end game? Is it for revenue? Is it for who? And what is the need for a data center in West Rock Hill Township to keep it like we all like it, rural?
Thank you.
Can I take a shot at answering that?
Yeah, we can,
So think of it this way. You've got a road outside and you're driving down the road and you can drive as fast as you want. You can swerve back and forth. And what keeps you from doing that? There's signs. There's a yellow line down the middle, don't cross. There's a speed limit sign, 25 miles an hour. No left turn, no right turn, no parking, whatever. Think of an ordinance that way. It's not inviting somebody to come in. It's saying, if you want to drive on our highway, these are the rules you're going to have to follow. So we're not inviting people to come in. We have to be open to applicants. We're trying to get ahead of it so that somebody's not dictating to us how fast they want to ride on the road, where they want to park, or they want to make left turns or whatever. We're setting out ahead of time, trying to get in front of it so that the 400-acre people can't come here because the ordinance restrictions restrict them from doing that. So it's not an invitation, it's a do not enter sign unless you meet these requirements.
Go ahead. My name's Jim Kraut, 930 Cat Hill Road. So like 4 houses away from where this data center is being proposed. I have 4 young kids. I chose my property because I own a business down in Horsham, but I chose moving up here, one, for the land, the open space, the animals. My kids love seeing the deer and the foxes and everything that's around there. I get what you're saying, like, hey, this is what we're trying to do to, put things in place, kind of like a do not enter, but using your analogy, guess what? People still break the laws. People still speed. People still do all that stuff. And with a couple different things, because again, I grew up in Horsham, and some might know that the water in Horsham is highly polluted. The Naval Air Base in the 60s and 70s, flame retardant stuff got leached in the water. Huge study being conducted by Temple University because of the rising cancer rates in Horsham. I mean, to the point that for my restaurant that I own, we had to install a reverse osmosis system to make sure the water was purified and everything before being used, because it's highly chemical. They have to put so much chemical into the water system to make it drinkable. Also, what if there's a fire? Yeah, I know there's halogen systems, things like that, we're supposed to suck out the air and all that stuff to preserve, but what if there's a building fire? They're going to have to use some kind of foaming agent to put out this fire, because obviously the data center is not going to want all that data lost. They're not going to want a ton of water. Well, I'm on a well system. Where is all that stuff that's going to go? It's going to go into the water that my family drinks, that my young children drink. I have a 5-year-old. That's my youngest. It's a 5. They love going outside. I don't want to hear the humming and all the noise from data centers out there. I purposely limit my kids' technology because, dude, as a kid, I grew up being outside. That's where I want my kids to be, is outside playing. We were just doing that tonight before coming here. The question really is what does Rock Hill Township, West Rock Hill Township want to be? I mean, do you want to be eventually all built up and everything like that? Like Horsham, where there is barely an open spot of land anywhere? Is that, is that the end goal? Because too, if they got to run water lines, sewer lines down the road, depending on which direction all come, like same thing. I've a friend who lives in Horsham where they ran a water line. Like he was one of the few areas left in Horsham that had a, I like being self-sufficient. So did he, having a well system, septic system, all that stuff, being self-sufficient. Well, they ran a water line down the road and the township forced them to eventually tie in out of his own pocket. Cost him $25,000. That's not something to take lightly. I mean, that's a lot of money, guys. I mean, 25,000, and he had no choice. They made it happen. So you start running all these things down there, we lose what it is to be a rural area. Again, an area that my family and we enjoy seeing the animals around there. We love, even it's a rural road, so it doesn't have sidewalks, just fine, but we'll walk down the road, we go down to the creek right there and stuff and see the animals and stuff. One of the good things of the drought was being able to explore the rock bed of the creek area, but it's like, what are we trying to do here? We don't need a data center here. We need to keep West Rock Hill the way it is. That's the draw of it. We don't need to be like everyone else where we just build everything up and then it's like, oh great, we have nothing left to preserve. So just some things to really heavily think about is the long-term impact that this will have on our community. Because again, yeah, if for some reason they do close, all that stuff in there is contaminant stuff. They're going to have to find a way to dispose of it all. No wind technology, no solar technology. There's nothing out there that's going to be able to handle the supply and demand. And we would be a fool to think that we can say, oh, well, they're going to be responsible for it all. Oh, there's no way this is going to be passed on to us. That's a lie. It's a business. PP&L is going to eventually have to continue to raise up rates. Like, well, we got all these data centers and we're going to have to pass the cost along. Look what they're doing down to Pico residents. For my business is down in Pico. Thank God I locked into my electric rate for 6 years, but Pico's raising their rates by over 40% because they don't have the electrical structure to be able to handle everything, and it's getting outdated. So all the things that they're adding, data centers, all that stuff, guess who's paying for it all? We are. We're paying for it all. And data centers take a massive amount of energy. And to think that PP&L is not going to need to update something, update a substation or something like that, we'd be a fool. I'll sell you beachfront property right out the door. Like, come on. Like, we know this is the stuff that's going to happen. And we can say all we want. No, they're going to eat the cost. Let me tell you, businesses like that, they figure out ways around that. And, the other thing we got to be careful about, if this thing is really happening, which I hope it is not happening, I hope we really take this to heart, is we got to be careful they don't go up and sell to another data center to try to circumvent rules that were placed in for them to try to get around it. There's all these little loopholes that they're gonna try. But you guys really need to think about what West Rock Hill Township is going to be. Are we going to be a data center, build up everything, and then no one really wants to live here and drive down property and bring in the things that we don't want? Again, I have 4 kids that love the place we live, but I'll tell you right now, I probably won't stay if the data center's coming. I'll move somewhere else because I know what's going to happen. And and being 4 houses down from it, I don't need to hear the noise. I don't need to be a part of that. I will go somewhere else. But I don't want to because I love this area. But I got to do what's best for my family. No, that's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm also from Folsom. And I have 4 kids and we moved up here. I'm Krista Green and I'm on Cat Hill Road. We moved up here, same thing. I lived across the street from the Navy base, Willow Grove, and the cancer rates have skyrocketed. And they can't even build on the base. The base will be
Hang on a
sold. Mhm.
Hey, guys.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'm from Horsham. 4 kids. My great grandparents graduated from Horsham. We moved up here mainly because of the water and the area and all the cancer rates have skyrocketed. And also they can't build on the base. So the base will probably be a park someday because they can't even build houses there because of all the PFAS that are in the ground and the contaminants. So I do have something prepared. And then at the end, I do have some suggestions. So let me just get what I have. All right. Thanks so much for all your work you've done so far with this. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Krista Green. I live directly across the street from the data center proposal site. My family chose to live here because of the rural character of this area, the open space, the farmland, the wildlife that surround us. Earlier today, while my neighbors and I were in the driveway waiting for the school bus and our elementary age kids, we watched a tractor pass. It was just a simple everyday reminder of the kind of place that this is, a rural community with farms and open land. Moments later, as I enjoyed this gorgeous day, a flock of 25 wild turkeys meandered across my front lawn. It was a vivid, living reminder of the very wildlife that stands to be displaced by the proposed data center just across the street. Moments like these remind me of how much wildlife and rural character are still part of our daily life here in West Rock Hill. It's hard to picture how a large industrial data center will truly fit into this landscape. And that's why we're here tonight, along with many of our neighbors, to ask the board to carefully consider whether this type of development, specifically a data center, fits into the character of our community. The residents of West Rock Hill continue to voice their concerns over the overdevelopment of this once rural township, and it's our desire to keep it rural. We voted you into office not to exploit the rural landscape, but to serve as responsible stewards so that our generations, our kids, can prosper and raise their families here. So we implore you to not just wait and see or hit and hope that when it comes to data centers. The present data about data centers and the negative and harmful experiences from those who have lived this speak for themselves. Please consider the following when drafting and finalizing the ordinance. Even a small data center can require 1 to 5 megawatts of power. That's enough to sustain up to 3,000 US homes. Larger can power up to 80,000 homes. This cost and drain should be put on a public power grid, should not be put on a public power grid where local consumers would be forced to absorb the cost incurred by a greater drain on the power grid. Any data center built in the township should be required to generate their own power, which I think we talked about a little bit. If diesel or gas power is utilized, a proper disposal plan is needed and a leak response plan needs to be in place. There also needs to be measures in place for air pollution, soil, groundwater, noise pollution. Data centers require cooling systems. I know we talked about that. We have well concerns already. In no way should any data center be allowed to use an on-site well for cooling, which we talked about that. An open loop cooling system will contaminate the environment. So we talked about closed looped, which needs to be required. I believe that this is in the plan, but it reduces the water usage by 70%, as you said, and the environmental impact on the local community. However, a closed loop still is not entirely free from environmental risks. So regulation will still need to be required for direct pollution if leaks occur for PFAS, refrigerant, et cetera. Even as we are told they will use air to cool, a significant amount of water is still involved with the air cooling, especially in our climate where it would be extremely difficult to use dry cooling exclusively on hotter days. Dry cooling uses fans with noise and vibration. There's chemical concern with dry cooling. The systems use refrigerants and specialized fluids like PFAS, and they're difficult to dispose of, and they can have long-term environmental pollution. They have the potential to generate a lot of noise pollution, as we've heard. Data centers operate 24/7. Many neighbors report the constant hum that can affect human health, like sleep disturbances, stress, headaches, anxiety, hearing loss, and cardiovascular issues over time. The sound can travel, as we heard, 1 to 3. I've heard 2 miles. I live directly across the street. How can we address this and mitigate this? The combined generators, cooling fans, ventilation, and operation can produce noise levels that exceed 90 decibels. They can have an impact, 85 or above can have an impact within 8 hours. So that's not good. In addition to the air, ground and noise pollution, these data centers create light pollution. 24/7 facilities with high intensity security lighting, these facilities can have an impact on human lives, the environment, and wildlife. We need to ensure that there are lighting regulations and for any new data center development. Data centers are high risk, high value targets for physical and cyber attacks. What security will be provided by the data center? What precautions will be put in place? Will neighbors and the community be at risk if there's a physical attack at the data center? And depending on who it's sold to, we don't really even know that yet. Which brings us to another concern, the volunteer fire department. Are they equipped and trained to respond to a fire and emergency at the data center? These data centers have substantial lithium battery banks, high voltage electrical systems, diesel storage, powerful cooling systems that create a wind tunnel effect, heightened security access, and other hazards. If a fire occurs, how will the site cleanup be conducted? Will the soil, air, and groundwater be permanently affected by internal fire suppression systems and chemicals, like we talked about in Horsham? I urge you to keep in mind that your decisions today and these next few months not only affect this generation of neighbors and tractors and turkeys, but those for generations to come. Data centers do not provide jobs. They have minimal manning requirements. They do not provide safety and security. They do not care if you live 150 feet away or miles away. The impact can be felt by the entire community. What side of resource depletion, utility costs, health hazards, air pollution, noise pollution, ground pollution, light pollution, and safety do we want to be on as a township? All research I have done, and I have not found one person or one community who's happy that they have a data center. Like in any of our research, not one person. That have been built in these areas. So why would we be the first ones that are like, yeah, we have a data center? Not going to be on every corner of the township. Okay, I know you said that. They're not on every corner, but one data center is too many. And it does affect every corner of this township. It will affect every corner of this township. So my questions, just based on tonight, I would love to see the lot minimum site to be at least 35 acres instead of 25 for buffer and for safety measures. And the second provision I would ask, can we raise the distance from a residential to 2,500 feet? Right now it's at 150 feet, and that is not nearly enough. Other ordinances are at 2,500 feet, for example, in Limerick and some of the other neighboring data center proposals. So 150 feet is very different from 2,500 feet, as well as 25 acres to 35 acres would make a world of difference in our township, in our West Rock Hill Township. Okay, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Cliff Cole, 2440 Shoecraft Road. You all might remember me as one of the Peoples for the Concerned Citizens who were attempting to stop the compressor, but that's another story. I just want to say that I do appreciate that the Planning Commission has taken this on and is doing is looking at this in a very professional manner. And I certainly am against data centers, but I do believe that we need to have this kind of ordinance and appreciate what you guys are doing here. So I have a few questions. Can the area of notification for when somebody wants to put one of these in can it be expanded to like the entire township, since this affects everybody in the township, not just the people that are in the nearby area? Usually the way I've had this happen myself, and my neighbors wanted to do something that was a variance that we were notified. So I'd just like to see, I would like to know about it, even if it's on Cat Hill Road. So that's one thing. Can these items be included as conditions of the permit? And some of the other people have already mentioned some of this stuff. A noise study for the 24/7 hum, fire retardant, understanding, and emergency plan, understanding, what the emergency plan is and the fire retardant stuff that was mentioned. by others too. And also security, which was, again, was mentioned, this should be done by a third party. Okay, and also a third point is that the ordinance doesn't distinguish between the different types of data centers there are. And we need to make sure that that is understood, and so that somebody doesn't come in saying that they're going to do one thing and then do another. So a few other points that I'd like to make. Certainly your comment about AI absolutely needs to be included. AI is the major driver of this. You made the mention that these things have more power than an IBM computer and all that kind of stuff, and maybe this is going to go away, but I'm sorry, that's not the way it works. Moore's law states that every 2 years, computers double in power, and they double in power consumption too. I am an engineer, electrical engineer. I have companies like Bell Labs and Intel on my resume. I literally have made the equipment that can go into these data centers. And just in my career, the amount of power consumption that these processors and the cooling that is required, you used to be able to get away with air cooled and stuff. So this is not going to go away, and it's going to get way worse before it gets better. The other point I'd like to make is that I think you're really on the right track with making it making it a rule that they have to generate some percentage of their own power. I'd like to suggest that instead of just saying that they have to do solar power, changing it to green or renewable energy, just change it. There's no reason why they couldn't install, some kind of energy system with geothermal or wind or whatever they can do, but change it instead of specifying solar, that it should be renewable energy. And why just 20%? Why not make it 40 or 50%? Make the bar high. That'd be my suggestion. So, but thank you.
Anyone else?
I just want
Go
to
ahead.
comment on one thing you said. Cliff, my 20% was just to start the discussion. That wasn't based on,
That's not part of the ordinance yet.
that wasn't based on any scientific analysis. It was proposing rewording from what was here to something different. So
I think it's a great idea. To have that in.
Chris, I got a comment.
Come on up, Tony. Where do you get to the microphone?
Tony Bogner, Clymer Avenue. The ordinance under data center equipment, I don't know if you want to put it up there, but the second sentence of that says data center equipment shall be an accessory to the data center and shall be located on the same track. Where do I have it here? I would suggest changing that language to the primary use of the data center, only because if I just had visions that on a 25-acre lot or a 34-acre lot, there's a lot of room to put a warehouse or something of that on there, on that property, if it's not being used. And that's not specific to the data center. That's my concern with that. So, because there could be a lot of land left over for additional use. That's all. I think the language should just be cleaned up or specify that a little bit, because it's kind of vague to me. Like I said, I wrote down primary use.
So if you're on the first page, data center accessory uses, it is limited to certain items.
I saw it on, what page is this? Page 2, under equipment.
Owner, I'm sorry.
Yeah, under uses and equipment, but it should be specific only to the data center.
shall be accessory to the data center.
Yeah, but I'm worried that you could have extra property there and put a warehouse of something of that nature that has nothing to do with the data center and claim that it's an accessory to the data center when in fact it's really not. Do that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just, Steve, you have any input on that?
I understand where the idea that you're discussing. I'm not sure exactly how to address it, but I mean, it may be something where, you know, we could clarify that the data center is the only use, like data center property can only have one principal use, the data center. And it can't have other, you know, it can't be a flex space where there's a warehouse, a data center, and something else on it.
You just have an exclusive use.
Yeah, and we have that. There's a provision for principal uses in a section of our ordinance, but I just don't know off the top of my head if it would apply to this, so it might be worth looking into making sure that data center is a single principal use on a property.
That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Yep. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm Sue Oshora, 715 Cattle Road, Sellersville. Okay, live right there. Some of my concerns when going and researching data centers were the effects on people's health. And we have a lot of young children. My boys were fortunate. They grew up, you know, there without any, and it was wonderful. But they're saying that there is a lot of people that have respiratory problems. I can tell you that I am one of them. And it's I'm afraid it's going to make it worse. So it's almost going to be forcing us to move out of our house so that we can live in an area that's more clean air. I mean, I do have an inhaler and all of that. But I'm also concerned about the young people that are growing up all around me. Okay? And where are you in life if you don't have your health? And if you're struggling to breathe and all of that? I am very concerned about that aspect because I struggle with a little bit because it's just, I have a lot of allergies. And then if they're going to be running chemicals and stuff and things that come out of all of that, that's going to make it even worse for our younger people. We do have a lot of young families on Cat Hole Road. Okay. So I think you need to take that into consideration because like I said, what are any of us if we don't have our health? Okay. That's one of my concerns. I also went online and started reading a lot of things about data centers. And I am concerned because a lot of people have moved into our community and their house is their biggest asset. Okay? They take pride in taking care of their home. A lot of data centers, information I read, has affected some communities with a decrease in their most important investment. And I feel that we need to take that into consideration. I know for us, we put a lot of sweat equity into our home. We have a beautiful Bucks County home that's stand right over there on the wall. And, you know, Dessa Road came and visited us and everything. And I'm concerned about that. We are also dealing with the 309, okay? So, you know, that on top of humming and a data center, I'm just not for it. And I just hope that you can put yourself in the position of other people that are right across the street from it. I said to my husband, who is a builder, retired, I said, I wish this township would, if you have to do anything, can you change it to residential? Look at what they're doing over on Cowpath Road and Forest Road, and they put a development in. That would not affect these people's most important investment. Make it residential and have a developer come in. Those houses over there are going for 800,000 starting to $1 million. And it's in a cul-de-sac. I don't know. I'm just saying, put yourself in the position that our community is faced with, living directly across, and West Rock Hill would get school tax dollars, okay? Because my understanding is that data centers do not pay school taxes. That's what I've read. So I know that they pay taxes, but they don't pay school taxes. So it would benefit our school district also, which is continuing to grow. So these are just some of my concerns. Thank you for your time.
We understand the concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Chris, can I make one more comment?
No, your time was up. Come on up.
Oh, no, we need your name. Go by the rolls.
I probably shouldn't ask this.
Who are you?
Tony. I had another note here. I probably shouldn't ask this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. In this ordinance, I looked at the whole thing. The setbacks are right. The property size is right. What would stop them from moving into an existing warehouse? Example, Quarry Road. There's nothing really in there to stop that.
So I'll answer that. I asked, when they were in here doing their presentation, I asked the guy, you know, is it possible to move into, you know, one of these warehouses? 'Cause we have so many vacant warehouses. And he says the flooring in the warehouses won't support the weight of
Oh,
the
Equipment.
the equipment
Equipment racks, yeah.
processors.
In addition to that, though, the change in use, if you establish this as a use, the change in use would still require them to do the special exception hearing.
but that's
convert the-
PI over there too, though.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
It's possible that they could do it, but they would have to go through the same approval process as a
Okay.
new facility to prove that they had met everything.
G3 warehouse or whatever,
Right.
right? So they'd have to go through change of use.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have to go through zoning.
Zoning hearing.
But looking at the ordinance, unless they saw something different, they physically could move there. They have the right amount of property, other than the floor, but I mean, on their end, but on the township's end, they could move into there. Is that correct?
It's
Not like I
possible.
want it. I'm not saying,
Right.
there's
You're
nothing
right.
to
It's
protect.
It's possible, but they still would have to go through the approval process, just like a new facility,
Okay,
to get approved to use that building. But
okay,
yes, it's not precluded from any of the existing buildings that
okay.
meet all the other.
That meet
standards.
everything else. That's why, I mean, I listen, I don't want it, but I'm just, I'm
Yeah, you're right. It could
I'm
go in
just
any other
trying to
building.
think of a way that, okay, if they didn't go there, how can you?
That's exactly
So-
why I asked the question.
So we'll make thin floors and then,
Make a thin
All new
floor
warehouses
requirement.
don't
yeah,
have floor.
3-inch concrete.
yeah, 3-inch floor. Okay.
Thank you.
Make a note of that. At the warehouse.
Change the warehouse. All right, all kidding aside, anyone else? All right. So thank you for all your comments and questions and suggestions. This is going to be an unpopular thing to say, but we have to allow data centers. Like, it's a recognized use in Pennsylvania. We have to allow it. We're doing everything we can to mitigate the impacts. But again, if somebody comes in and if we don't allow this use and somebody comes in and says, you don't allow this use, we're going to go to the state, we're going to sue you, and they're going to get the use.
And they can put it wherever they
And
want it.
they're going to have
Yeah,
a lot
whatever,
less regulations.
whatever size, and whatever size lot they want.
Yes,
So why is it that you have to?
that's
Is it what there's-
fair share. Yeah, it's regulated by the MPC.
Municipal planning code.
So if somebody comes in township, any township, no matter what, you have to make it happen.
No, we don't have to make it happen. We have to provide space for it to be considered.
So you have to.
Just like an adult bookstore. It's just like an adult bookstore. Nobody likes adult bookstores, but you have to provide zoning somewhere in your township for adult bookstores.
It's like the village center. We had to change the zoning.
The state law, you have to provide for every type of zoning.
All these big data centers going in, who's, you know.
That's state level. That's,
one here.
that's,
Yeah, that was going to be my comment to this. I mean, first of all, we're not elected. We're all volunteers.
Yeah.
yeah.
We're appointed by elected officials.
So
But the people living across the street from it.
I understand, and I'm not arguing with anybody's
No.
comments, and I appreciate the comments, but there are things that we have control over, but there's a lot of things we don't that are controlled at the state level. That's why I suggest contact your state representative. What's his name?
Stotts.
Stats. Yeah, Greg Stats. I got a thing in the mail where he's having an open house. He has more say in what can be done with these things than we do.
I guess that question comes up, Chris, congratulations on another term.
Thanks.
But why you're creating an ordinance there, and it seemed like what I heard at the very beginning was, let's just get something on the books. But rather, why don't we get something on the books that's very stringent, okay? I mean, some really good suggestions in here about.
Yeah, and-
35 acres, go for 2,500 feet, right? A lot of different things in there, so those things should be thrown into it today.
Yeah, I mean, I've noted all these suggestions
That's
and
fine.
we're going to keep
Why
this
we're having a
process
meeting.
rolling. This is why we're taking this input. This is why we're meeting as a group. This is why we're taking your input. Because this is a rolling,
It's a work in progress.
it's a work in
Feedback
process.
Saying we agree with 35 acres minimum, the 2,500 feet.
Yeah, we didn't, I mean, we're just hearing it.
The other thing was, the county hasn't responded yet at all. Feedback.
Right.
Don't you all want to like see what they have to say first?
Absolutely.
Before you give any kind of feedback to them,
Yeah,
you
and,
know what I mean? Because yours may come in easier than, that's all.
Right.
Right.
and if it does, then they supersede us.
The other piece everybody mentioned about the fire company.
Hey, did you get up and state your name?
Yeah, how bad?
Him.
It's Tony. I'm sorry. I should have had you come up. I'm sorry.
Joe's 20 Holiday House Road. And again, congratulations, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
But for the fire companies, obviously right now, there's so many fire companies that are struggling to find volunteers. And when you see something like this coming in, I'm dealing with something else similar to like a battery storage company, all right? Big battery storage companies. And they can't get the fire companies to want to come out to fight them.
Right.
You know, but thinking about it, should we say in the ordinance that the data center would be having their own fire company, have to pay the fire company, right? Something versus just volunteers, right? I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, basically we get fire marshal review to make sure it's
Right.
a safe building and it's able to be controlled by,
And as these things are emerging, these data centers, but I thought I heard something with the federal government. Maybe it was Trump. Maybe it probably was. But as far as the electricity, mandating that they have to be self-sufficient.
They have to pay.
So if they're in the middle of doing that, why are we jumping the gun? Like let's make sure that that's part of it, that they have to be more self-sufficient than 20%, 40%, maybe it's 80%, maybe it's 100.
well, then getting back to your original question, this is an evolving thing and there's going to be more regulations coming down the road as this, we get more data from the state and whatnot. And then we can plug that in. down the road. So we want to get this done as fast as possible and plug in new stuff as it comes in.
So we've got something on the books.
Sure.
If the
Some
data
sort of-
center
You
comes
need something
in.
on the books, because you have to have some type of, some type of something to base your opposition or your,
Yeah, I just want to make sure that that thing on the books is very stringent, that's all.
the living document.
The living document versus like, I think Steve mentioned, you can kind of like change it going down the road if you need to, but to me, if I'm a data center trying to come in and then you start changing it, you're moving the goalpost. So you have to be very
Do what you
careful.
can now.
Yeah, you do what you can now and really think it through, so, you know, but that's kind of it, you know, so. But we don't envy what you guys go through, trust me. But we appreciate your time you volunteer.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, thanks.
I didn't read the president's comment that way, that if you build a data center, you have to have power right next door. I read it that you have to offset it somewhere. So 5 of these people get together and they pay to somebody to build a generator in Kentucky, that balances out. Maybe not Kentucky, but Carpenter County or something like that. Not necessarily right there on site, but
Yeah.
somewhere within the local power network that there's an offset.
I only caught part of it, so I was trying to figure out what it was, but he had everybody in the
Yeah,
the
I
Oval
saw
Office
that
and
too.
it was like, okay,
I
let's
read it
get
today,
some.
and it was, it, to that extent, but it has to be relevant to that project.
Right.
Like it has to be within that grid system or
Whatever, right.
the generation
Right,
has.
not
to be
necessarily
with
right there
that.
next door,
Yeah,
but
right.
somewhere
Not
where there's
a-
an offset.
Not a mini new facility right there.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you mentioned the closed loop, which makes a ton of sense, but you also mentioned about maybe the daily usage of how much it takes to fill it and a time period. So maybe there's a certain limit to how many gallons per day they can fill it, right? And a time frame of doing it. But that said, the closed loop with fans makes noise, and it's all been brought up. Did you determine what the decibel level will be and the timing of the decibel levels? Because like it could be in the ordinance too to say, hey, the decibel levels can only be X and maybe during working hours, but at night it can't be X. It's got to be Y. Okay. So just
Yeah, I think it references township decibel levels, which do have
Existing.
limits
Right.
with regard to times of day and
yeah.
things of that sort.
I think one of the other sample ordinances I saw was it from Allegheny. Had an even more extensive noise section on it. And I was gonna look into that a little more detail with the solicitor to see if that, any of that is worth incorporating over and above what the current noise level is for the township.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you guys.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Is this the only topic on the agenda for this meeting?
Yes. You're free to leave.
It doesn't mean we have to keep going.
Answer a question about Vanderbilt Preserve.
Well, we have,
I would save that for supervisors. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess how do we want to handle this? I mean, we have a lot of suggestions that we came up with tonight. Somehow we have to incorporate this into.
I can't wait to hear your report next Wednesday.
Oh my.
Me too. No, I'm out. I'm already out. I really am out of town.
Table this, we can see the revised draft for next Monday.
Well, I think we need to. Yeah, it is a lot. But somehow it's got to be, somehow it does have to be, all this information has to be drafted into a recommendation of some sort.
We could recommend the table. I mean, we could recommend that the supervisors
Well-
continue to gather data before any approvals. Maybe.
Right.
We need to,
I would suggest if your general sense is that you agreed with, let's just say 100% of the comments that were made today, at least for consideration, that you could recommend that the comments that were made tonight that will be included in the minutes be considered by the supervisors and the township professionals to modify this ordinance. And as I said earlier, any modification of the ordinance will come back to the planning commission. So everyone will have a chance
Yeah, that makes
to
sense.
see it, a revised version of it.
Those will have to go through legal and all of that.
Yeah. So it may not be next month. It may be 2 months until it's all gone through and rewritten, but
Right.
it could be next month.
I make said motion.
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right. Next item on the agenda is old business. I have no old business. Anyone have anything?
None for me.
New business? I have no new business. Steve, we got anything coming in the pipeline here?
It's picked up a plan, Mennonite Community or whatever the current name is proposing some new facilities down there. So I think it's just a sketch plan, but you'll be seeing that.
Any of the old things coming back in front of us?
Dave Nice, the contractor services, yeah, we got that plan in, but he wasn't in time to get on this.
Right,
agenda,
right,
so
right.
We anticipate that they'll be on the April agenda.
Okay.
Nothing else?
I could think
Nothing
of
going on with,
something you know that I.
yeah, he's closer to everything than you are.
A lot of activity on this.
I mean, Select Properties is just out there. They, like, last year they were throwing in plans left and right.
Right.
And then they stopped. So, you will see them again.
So there's a lot of clearing done on the golf track. So
Rough track, they were doing testing,
they cleared.
or
a lot of
infiltration
land.
testing and things.
They cleared probably over an acre of land back there.
All right. Yeah, we heard about that. We talked to them about it, but now that I could, if the weather's cleared up, I'll go back there myself and identify what they did.
So moving on to public comment. Anyone want to come up and make more comment? Seeing none, I would, for a motion to adjourn.
Make said motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. We
Thanks,
appreciate
thank you.
coming out, and we'll incorporate what we can.
Yeah, they've been starting to toy around with the property again. The way they build them now, they have two separate contractors. The site is one people and the building is Wawa. And I understand they were in there doing some coring and stuff for the building contractor to show up. But now that the weather's, yeah, I think the weather, that killed everybody this winter. They just walked away. It's like-
Weather shut down most construction.
I don't have a specific.
Good night.
Yeah, they was.
Yeah.
It almost looks like they built that and that. There's times they like to build the whole thing out.
No, there's still a,
Looks really like that end towards 309 really comes out to where it's almost like